Hello, this is Rohan, and now that Persona 3 is all wrapped up, I decided that now is the time I'm going to make my thoughts on Farm Engage video. So, what is Farm Engage? So, it is the 17th mainline game in the series, and it released on January 20th, 2023, of course, the year I'm recording this. It's also been 3 years since the release of Three Houses as well. That was the last main series Fire Emblem game, of course, and it's quite different from Engage actually. Anyway, people also theorized that this game was meant to be the 30th anniversary game for the series, but it was pushed back probably due to what happened in 2020. Although another thing that's also been theorized is that Engage may not be the 17th game, due to some numbers in the code. But yeah, we won't worry about that until later. Anyway, so this is the first Fire Emblem game that released while I was making content on my channel. So yeah, it proved quite the roller coaster of an experience waiting for this game to be released. So yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster of thoughts for me before release, since yeah, I was a bit surprised that those leaks were true due to how different the art style was. But that did start to grow on me once we got to see more of the cast and artwork, and once the game did come out, I was just fine with the art style. Yeah, when my brother showed me those leaks for the first time, yeah, it was quite the shock. I definitely thought that they wouldn't be real because of just how drastic it was, but turns out that was very wrong. Anyway, next thing was we did get a lot of trailers and stuff, and also some like gameplay shown before release as well. So yeah, I was quite sure that I would like the gameplay, but I did feel a bit on the fence about the thumbnail. And one of my friends I was talking to during my community posts, he was even more worried about it too. So I was hoping that the game would handle like the thumbnail and stuff better than I was expecting. The end result was a bit better than I expected, but still kind of a mixed bag, which yeah, we'll get into later. But yeah, like I said, my expectations weren't really like amazing to begin with, but yeah, most of those got quashed once I actually experienced the gameplay, which yeah, we'll be getting onto now. So onto the gameplay. So just like any other Fire Emblem game, you have your units, and you need to defeat the enemy units, which allows them to gain experience and level up, to gain more stats. And of course, completing the map objectives is how you progress through the game. So that's pretty much the same. But Engage has quite a few new mechanics introduced, and yeah, we're gonna be focusing on those for the gameplay section of this video. So yeah, let's start off with probably the biggest one, which will be the 12 Ember Rings, as well as the mechanics adjacent to them, like the skill acquisition and the bond rings. So, the 12 Ember Rings, they are of course represented by heroes from past Fire Emblem games, aka like the lords and stuff. These 12 rings are essential for getting the most out of the units in Engage. Each ring has two states called Synced and Engage. Synced is the normal state where the unit acts like normal, but can make use of the emblem sync skills, which are the skills that are always active on the emblem, as well as making use of the stat boost the emblems give. So, for example, Marth, the first emblem ring you get, his first sync skill is called Perceptive, which gives you a void on the player face based on your speed. And his stat boosts are Strength, Dex, and Speed. And yeah, those stat boosts also level up as the bond level of the emblem levels up too, which we can get into later. Anyway, the next state is of course Engage. Engage is when the unit and the emblem merge into one super unit, who gains access to some powerful exclusive Engage skills, as well as a Engage attack, which are always 100% accurate, and they generally do lots of damage, and normally have additional effects too. So, using Marth as an example again, he gets Divine Speed when he engages. This basically gives the unit an extra attack at 50% damage, very very useful. And of course his engage attack is Lodestar Rush. It's, I believe, 30% power. It's 7 attacks at 30% power basically, which does add to more damage obviously. And yeah, it's actually really nice. I do like Lodestar Rush quite a bit. But yeah, it's definitely not the most powerful engage type. There are definitely some emblems that have some pretty ridiculous ones, but we'll get into those later. Anyway, so to get into the engage state, the engage meter needs to be full, which it always is at the start of the map. But it can be recharged, which can be done by ending your turn on the blue energy spots on the map, which fills the meter to full, but outside that it can be recharged based on the rounds of combat the performs, as well as the amount of allies they heal. So, you generally have only 3 turns of engage, but that can increase to 4 later on, and yeah, once it runs out, you can obviously try to recharge it. There are definitely some ways to help with that, like I mentioned, rounds of combat. The more rounds of combat you actually participate in, the faster it charges up. So, and a weapon that attacks multiple times, like a brave weapon, is actually pretty useful for recharging the engage meter. So that's something important to remember. And yeah, more engage obviously means more time as a super unit. So yeah, you're going to be it's definitely something to keep in mind. Anyway, so engaging is really well executed since they're able to open up many strategies to help gain momentum in that. And while they are powerful, I felt the power level of the enemies in hard and maddening mode made you think whether to save the engage at a later point on that or right now to solve a difficult situation, which is great. I was worried that the engager would be a bit too broken, but on hard and maddening, it's actually pretty well balanced. Hard is a bit on the easy side in this game, but I do think that engaging isn't the main reason why. Because again, it's still a really fun mechanic, and it's really engaging to think about whether you want to save it for later or use it right now to clear something annoying. So yeah, like I said, pretty great stuff. So as a main gameplay mechanic, the Emblem Rings are really well done, and it does help that all of them are useful in their own ways, even if some are obviously more powerful than others. Let's move on to the Bond Rings now. So, Bond Rings, they can be made with Bond fragments in the ring chamber, and they are basic rings that only give stat boosts and nothing else to the unit. And the main use is to allow a unit to gain SP so they can learn more skills, but only at half the rate when compared to the 12 Emblem Rings. So, Bond Rings come in ranks C, D, A, and S. And S is what we're mostly interested in. They get the most stat boosts, but some of the S rank Bond Rings actually give skills, with the most important ones being Olwen with her Dire Thunder, which allows a Thunder term to attack twice like a brave weapon. Only the basic Thunder term though, but this is still really good. And Claude with Wind God, which makes it so that if you're full health, your bows have 1 extra range, which yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. Anyway, both Emblem and Bond Rings help a unit gain SP, which is used to learn some skills from the Emblem. These range from some of the sync skills of the Emblem to simple stat boosts. So yeah, using Mob example again, you can inherit his like perceptive and break defenses and unyielding skills, and you can also get some stat boost skills from him. I believe he gives the avoid plus skills. Some of the other emblems might give you other stats, like Roy gives you strength and Link gives you speed, for example. So yeah, and yeah, those stat boosts can still be quite useful even if they don't seem as impressive as some of the skills you can get. Anyway, so the amount of SP you get is equal to the amount of experience you get, as long as you have an Emblem Ring equipped. And that is hard if you have a Bond Ring instead, and if you don't have any ring equipped, you get nothing for SP. The skills in this game are interesting to think about, since the unit can only equip 2 additional skills at once. They can only learn skills from emblems, unlike learning them from classes like an Awakening of Fate. And I guess 3 has to extend it as well. there are definitely some clear winners though in terms of skills. The big one for me and my brother is Canter from Sigurd. This is 1000 SP and allows the unit to move 2 spaces after they do an action that gives you XP, specifically. But that includes attacking, healing, all that. So it's very powerful, and I liken it to Gale Force and Awakening in the sense that you want on every unit because of just how useful it is. So yeah, in my playthroughs I make sure that everyone gets Canter because it's that good. Other good skills though are from Lyn. The speed plus skills and speed taker are very important because yeah, increasing your speed means you're able to double and one run more effectively. Speed taker is quite hard to set up because it needs you to defeat the enemy to gain +2 speed, but the reward is quite impressive. For only 2000 SP you can make a set unit has +10 speed, which is ridiculous. But yeah, I have definitely seen the skill work extremely well in Maddening mode, for example. Like my brother's last Maddening playthrough, where yeah, he definitely made good use of Speed Taker to help clear the map. So yeah, those are definitely some of the big skills, and then there's also DLC, which we'll talk about at another time. But yeah, there are definitely some powerful skills there as well. Anyway, there are other skills that are also pretty good, but they're more used for specific strategies. But they're also interesting to think about, like Wrath to increase your crit rate by 30% for each health you lost. Kinda like the one in Tearing Saga actually, except unlike Tearing Saga there is a HP cap of 30. There's Vantage, which works the same as it usually does. It allows you to attack first when you're under a specific amount of HP. They're very, very useful, especially with Wrath, obviously. And then Pair Up, which makes it so that you become immune to enemy chain attacks, which is very good for your tanks. So yeah, these are some very interesting skills to think about, and yeah, a lot of them actually do have uses, but yeah, those are the main ones that come to mind. And of course, there's some pretty strong ones in DLC, which we'll talk about later. But anyway, SP gain has changed quite drastically due to the addition of the Well in the second major update, which allows the player to earn SP books without DLC, which can make gaining extensive skills like Lunar Brace, which is like 3000 SP normally, a lot easier, and yeah, that really transforms your player base units. But anyway, overall, this is a really interesting skill system. There's still a lot to think about as you mostly think about its synergy with the emblem you have equipped, and I still quite like this, even if the things have been made a lot easier due to law, because yeah, before, you really needed to plan out and make correct choices with the skills to make sure you have like enough SP and stuff to get what you want. But yeah, now things are a lot easier. You can use those books, and those books make things a lot easier for like your really strong builds. But yeah, while I probably prefer how SP was handled before the Well, at least now players have the freedom to now get more SP if they so wish, so they can make more expensive builds. So that's nice at least. But yeah. So that's the skills and stuff. Let's move on to the next mechanic. The next new mechanic we need to talk about is the unit type traits. So each class in Engage has a unit type associated that ties into a role in battle. Certain unit types may also get additional effects when they sync or engage with emblems. In most cases, the unit will get a bonus, like Marth giving backup units an extra attack with Low Star Rush, or allowing Divine Speed's follow-up to poison with coverts. Some others can change quite drastically depending on the unit's type, like Byleth raising different stats with his Instructing Goddess stance, or Corrin creating different terrain with their Dragon. Outside of emblems, some of the unit types also have special abilities that they can perform, like the backups and the key adepts, and enemies can take advantage of these too, so they must be taken into account. The main unit types to encounter while playing Engage are Dragon, which is used for Alyr's classes, and gives them additional effects and engagement and emblem in most cases. Again, we can use Marth for example. Low Star Rush will have 9 attacks now. I believe it is up 30% attack power, so yeah, the damage increases quite a bit. And then Divine Speed, the extra attack will actually heal all damage dealt, so yeah, that's pretty cool too. And yeah, these effects are normally quite strong to make up for the fact that dragons don't have the best stats in the world when compared to other classes. Next is Cavalry, which is used for the land-based high movement classes, so they have a good amount of movement, but they're weak to rider offensive weaponry like the Rider Spear. Mysticals are magic based, and their tome attacks ignore terrain effects, kinda like magic and echoes. Backups are mostly infantry classes, and they're able to perform chain attacks if they are in attack range of the enemy, and those always have 80% accuracy, so enemy evasion doesn't matter, and they always do 10% of the enemy's HP no matter what the defense, making chain attack excellent at helping to deal with stronger opponents, especially at the lower HP and defense and evasion and truth. Warriors and heroes are probably the best backups in the game. Warriors get long bows, so they're able to chain attack from free range. And heroes have a skill called Brave Assist, which allows them to attack twice or chain attack when at full HP. So yeah, they're both definitely the clear winners when it comes to chain attacking. Anyway, Coverts are next, and they double their evasion in avoid increasing terrain, like forest. So like a forest that gives 30 avoid now gives them 60. So yeah, they can dodge tank pretty easily because of that, but especially thieves because they have access to one-to range in daggers. The only issue is that on Magni mode, enemies ignore you if they can't hurt you or hit you, which makes the covert evasion strategies a bit less effective. Then there's flying, which is of course used on flying mounted classes. They can ignore terrain and have pretty good movement, but of course use the bows. Finally, or well, one of the final ones is Key Adept. This is used for mostly support-based classes, and it gives them the ability to chain guard when at full HP, which allows them to block all damage for adjacent ally on the first attack, but the Key Adept takes damage on doing this, so it can't be repeated unless you heal the Key Adept. This can be a pretty great way for protecting a potentially vulnerable ally. Which, yeah, that's always pretty nice, but you need to be careful that your Key Adept is not in range, kind of defeating the purpose. And also, yeah, enemies love taking advantage of this, especially when it comes to like bosses and stuff, so yeah, it's quite annoying, but there are definitely workarounds like engage attacks, don't care about chain guarding for example, so yeah. And of course AoE attacks that hit the Key Adept as well, so they can't chain guard, yeah, that also works pretty good. Anyway, Armored is next, and that's used for Armor Knights and Generals. And it means that they cannot be broken by the weapon triangle, so making them quite good on the enemy phase, especially early on. Although they are weak to armor same weapons, and they have poor resistance, so magic is also quite effective. And also keep in mind that you can't be broken if you take no damage, so if you already have good defense, you don't really need to go into an armor class. But anyway, overall, these traits, especially chain attacks and chain guarding, add a lot to the gameplay, since it can be invaluable by adding more strategy to your gameplay, and it helps keep maps engaging, since enemies can also take advantage of these. It also gets to play in more recent try different classes too, which is always pretty cool. Now, as for our Armor Knights, in the last section, I mentioned Break and the weapon triangle, so let's go on to that now then, since it's also another new mechanic. So the weapon triangle engage works very differently, considering it doesn't actually give you extra hit and avoid like it usually does. In this game on the player phase, if you have the advantage, you can break the enemy, which prevents them from countering during that round of combat and the next round of combat, and this is a really cool way to make the player respect the weapon triangle, considering that enemies can break you too, which can have a big impact on your enemy phase. Of course, yeah, if you decide you're going to try an enemy phase with your hand axe, but there are a lot of sword units in the way, yeah, you better think twice, for example. But yeah, Break is not only achieved by the weapon triangle though, you can also achieve it by using a new stuff called Fracture, which has 10 range, and allows you to, or 1 to 10 range I should say, and allows you to break the enemy if it hits. And there's also another way, which is through some engage attacks have can have additional effects to allow you to break, mainly the key adepts, but also smash weapons too, by smashing the enemy into another wall or an enemy. But anyway, overall, Break opens some very interesting strategy of player phase, and does encourage the player to bring as much weapon shrine control as possible. Of course, so you can break yourself, but also avoid being broken. And yeah, of course, allowing an enemy not to counterattack is a very great way to help feed a kill to a weaker unit, so yeah, very cool stuff. Maddening mode changes Break quite a bit. It's not as good, mainly because bosses pretty much not always immune to Break. But regular enemies will still be vulnerable to it, so yeah. Even the strongest enemies are maddening, as long as they're not a boss, will have to be afraid, so yeah. Overall, yeah, Break is quite important, and it's a very cool new mechanic that definitely helps make the weapon triangle seem a lot more relevant, which is something that was definitely not the case in older games, especially when the weapon triangle didn't give that much hit and void, like in Fire Emblem or something. But yeah, again, weapon triangle is kind of an important part of Fire Emblem, so it's cool that Engage decided to make a cool new twist on it. Now let's talk about the weapons in this game. So, weapons have infinite uses in Engage just like in Fates. And I actually quite like how they were handled in this game. There's a few things, mainly that all the weapons don't really have any drawbacks and stuff like in Fates. And also, they're kind of balanced quite well around how weapon rank works, which I'll talk about later. But anyway. So yeah, like I said, no weapon feels overly balanced like in Fates. Like for example, hand axes can still double no problem, tomahawks are the same like that, so yeah. Tomahawks are still 1-2 range, which should be safe, so yeah. Nothing feels overly balanced because of that. Brave weapons are still pretty useful, silver weapons are still pretty useful, all that jazz. And yeah, like I said, Fates try to balance all the weapons so that all of them still have a use, but because of how weird the weapon ranks work in that game, and also some weapons feel balanced, I didn't really like it as much, which is why I was kind of happy to see breakable weapons come back in 3 houses. But yeah, Engage definitely shows a much better way of making use of them, which is nice to see. Anyway, alongside that is the Forging, which can be used to upgrade a weapon by 5 levels, or evolve the weapon if you want, with the use of ingots. And there's an interesting thing about how much Forging is needed for certain weapons, or when is a good time to forge a specific weapon too, considering ingots aren't super easy to find, even with the help of the dogs in the song. Of course, yeah, you can think about increasing the might, but yeah, hit and lowering the weight can also be quite important too. Anyway, alongside forging, weapons can be given in grays, which cost bond fragments, and they bestow their own stat changes to the weapon. And these are also quite interesting to think about, since they also have some trade-offs most of the time, like losing might in exchange for hit, or gaining might at the cost of weight. Stuff like that. And yeah, these and grays are based on the emblems you currently have. Available, I guess you could say. But anyway. So, Engage also introduced a new type of weapon called the Smash Weapon. These consist of the blades, the great lances, and the great axes, as well as some other weapons. So these weapons generally have a lot of might, but they're unable to double, and the player initiates with them, they always attack last, but are able to smash in that case, which causes the enemy to move back 1 space if they don't die. If the enemy bumps into another enemy or wall, they can get broken too, and this can even break armor units too. But yeah, smash weapons do have their place. Not only can you use them for the smash, but of course you can try using them for a one-shot. They're also really great if the enemy can't counter, which of course good for something like an archer, but also if the enemy's broken. So yeah, they definitely have their place. So yeah, that's I'd say they're a pretty cool addition as like a kind of gimmicky weapon, because they don't feel too gimmicky like some of the weapons in Fate. So yeah, that was great to see. While on the topic, there was something I neglected to talk about when I talk about the emblem rings. So each of the emblems can actually give them a weapon, I believe called an engage weapon. Yeah, you gain access to these weapons when you engage with the emblem, and these are generally quite nice and have additional effects. You can use Morphic as an example. You can give, when you engage them, you can use this Rapier, which increases your Void, but also, of course, has armored and cavalry effectiveness. And as you level up, you can gain access, as you level up his bond, you gain access to more weapons. And yeah, some of these engaged weapons are actually really nice, although some of them you're probably not going to use that much just because a forged up weapon of your own could probably do better. But yeah, still a really cool mechanic. It's also cool to see what weapons they decide to reference and bring back, so yeah, that was really cool. On the topic of weapons too, let's also talk about staves. They're quite powerful, because yeah, you have a lot of options for not only healing, but also you have movement-based staves, like your good old Warp and Rescue, and Rewarp even makes a return too. But there's also some staves that impede, like of course Freeze, Silence, Fracture, which we talked about earlier. There's even Obstruct, which is actually just a light rune staff, which basically blocks off a space, but the enemy can destroy it. I actually found that stuff really fun to use, probably helping by the fact that it's very cheap to buy as well, because if block off an enemy, or block off a tile can actually be quite effective if used correctly. Then there's also the change to Restore. So Engage does have some status elements, some of them are even changed a little bit too. Mainly Poison, but yeah, Silence is still a thing. I talked about Freeze. But yeah, there's also Poison, which I don't know if I'll be able to talk about, but it does work for weapons, so yeah. Most daggers can inflict the poison effect if they deal damage. And I guess knives too, because yeah, knives are 1 range but generally have high crit rate, and daggers are 1 to 2 range. But anyway, so yeah, poison's interesting. Unlike other games where it basically lowers your HP each turn, in Engage what it does instead is actually increase the damage you deal to the enemy. And this can stack up to 3 times. One tick of poison increases damage by 1, another would increase damage by 3, and the maximum of 3 stacks means you do 5 extra damage. So yeah, it can be quite deadly, but Restore gets rid of it as well as Antitoxin. So yeah, it's a great mechanic to make use of your own, and again, it's another cool gimmick to add to some of the weapons. And kind of prefer it to how the debuffs work on the daggers and Fates as well. So again, another mechanic from Fates they decided to polish up a little bit, which I quite like. But anyway, the stuff thing that Restore does in this game, other than healing bad stats and stuff, it actually cures stat drops. Something that I wish was in Fates, because yeah, debuffs in that game go away 1 per turn. So if you were given a -4 debuff, you have to wait 4 turns for it to go away. But in this game, if you get afflicted by something like that, which yeah, on Maddening mode, enemies have seal skills. Like, you know, seal res, seal defense, all that. You just use a Restore stuff and they're fine. So yeah, again, another mechanic they decided to refine from Fate. So yeah, overall, weapons felt really nice to use, and it felt good building up a good arsenal of weapons for my units. And of course, like I kind of mentioned a lot of the ideas they took from Fate they decided to rework and refine, and yeah, it actually worked out quite well. I wouldn't mind seeing infinite use weapons again if they use like this as well. Next up, let's talk about how bosses are handled, because these are a little bit different too. So, due to the immense power of engagement, I did wonder how the bosses would be designed to not make maps too easy to skip with tactics like warping in an engage unit. That is through Revival Stones, which are basically multiple health bars. So yeah, I actually kind of like this mechanic, since it means that killing the boss requires a lot more thought, and on how to get through the multiple health bars to neutralize them. Yeah, you can't just throw in the unit willy-nilly, because yeah, if you underestimate the extra health they have, then yeah, they can really mess you up. So yeah, again, it does mean that bosses take a lot more thinking, which again makes the gameplay quite engaging. However, one gripe I have is that I kind of wish this mechanic was properly introduced, since not only my brother, but also 2 other people I talked to got caught out by the boss in Chapter 5, which is where they introduced the Revival Stone mechanic. Because the main reason why is that if you get close to the boss, that's when you actually get the tutorial, and then by that point it's too late, and yeah, your unit is probably a risk of dying because he also moves, which yeah, that's annoying. So yeah, it's a good mechanic, but I kinda wish yeah, it was introduced better, like maybe making the boss not move, or give you the tutorial much earlier before attacking him, so yeah. So yeah, other than that, the reversals are great. Like I said, you need to think very carefully about how to kill some of these bosses, because yeah, if you're careless and decide you're going to try and overextend and hope you kill the boss, and not take into account how much health they have, then yeah, it can end in disaster. So yeah, like I said, it's a really interesting thing to think about, and again, helps make the gameplay very engaging. So yeah, while we're talking about bosses in this game though, this game really likes reusing the main group of antagonists as bosses. Especially during the midpoint of the game, which is a bit annoying gameplay wise, since Final doesn't feel as special and important as it should be. At least most of these battles do change up the battling tactics for each of the encounters, and some of these battle tactics are pretty well thought out too. So yeah. Again, that's just my nitpick. I always liked fighting like generic bosses, even if they're only a one-time thing, because it does mean you can save the more important villains for something more interesting later. But yeah. Again, that's another minor nitpick. It doesn't really ruin the experience too much for me. So yeah, there's that. Overall though, yeah, bosses are pretty interesting in this game. I do like how they did take into account the massive power you gain from engaging when designing this, so that's pretty neat. Let's move on to units and classes now. So the units themselves felt quite fun to use, and the ones that do require more can still turn out quite strong thanks to their favoritism too, which is always nice. Strong base stats do seem quite important considering who the best units in the game are though, but then again, that's a pretty common thing when it comes to the series. But yeah. On that though, thinking about what emblems also work best for each class unit was also a pretty interesting thing about too, and it did make trying out playthroughs pretty fun as a result. As for the classes themselves, most of them are perfectly usable, and the new classes prove pretty fun to see in action, like the Wolf Knight. This is a cav class that of course rides a wolf. Their main weapon of choice is the dagger, but they can also use swords, lance and axes depending on what you decide to, depending on your choice basically. It's a pretty good class because your daggers are strong, so they prove kind of a menace at the 1-2 ranging. Then there's the Martial Master. This replaces the generic healing classes, like the Priest and the Cleric basically. They seem kind of underwhelming at first because arts have kind of a gimp damage formula. Basically, you add the weapon might plus your strength and magic divided by 2, so you need to have both pretty good. But yeah, this does mean that yeah, you're using quite low attack with these weapons, and they don't generally have the most mind one. But with the Erica Ring giving you a lot of true damage thanks to Luna Brace, that's when they become really good. Mainly Flashing Fist Art, which has good might, gives you +5 speed to double, so you can quad the enemy, and yeah, with those quad attacks and the true damage from the Luna Brace, you actually shred through those really annoying high defense enemies. And it's really fun to see my brother use this in his maybe mid playthroughs, for example. Anyway, there are definitely some classes that are more powerful than others. Warrior is a good example. It outclasses not only Berserker but also Sniper because of its stats, so yeah, there's that. And it also has a much cooler class skill, which I will get into later. Wyverns are still, you know, Wyverns. They're still really overpowered. Most units are going to do quite well as a Wyvern, and most of the best options are going to be Wyvern. And there's Hero, which, because of Dual Assist and its plus version, as well as Brave Assist, yeah, you can basically give that to any unit and they'll work quite well, as long as they're full health, because yeah, 2 chain attacks and a chance that you don't need to be in range to do those 2 chain attacks is quite nice, because of Dual Assist works. But anyway, finally, let's also talk about how reclassing works. I actually really like it. So first off, promotion. First off, let's talk about promotion first. So you want to promote as early as possible because each unit has an internal level, and this is what actually affects your XP. So promoting later doesn't actually give you more EXP, and the promoted classes have better growth, so yeah, you might as well promote as early as you can, provided that you have a lot still. But you're not punished for waiting too late though. You'll just get your eternal levels. You'll just get more eternal levels, which means you'll level up slower, but that won't really cause that much pain. Especially because the growth differences aren't too big, so yeah, really you can promote at any time, but yeah, earlier is better though, so keep that in mind. Anyway, so when it comes to promotion reclassing, your unit needs to have the right proficiencies to get into the desired class. And you can gain more proficiency by leveling up the bonds of the emblems. As some bond levels will give you proficiencies in the weapons, so again, for example, let's use Moth. He of course it gives you sword proficiency, so if you want to use swords, you might want to think about raising his bond level. So due to the system, it's very easy to put a unit into the class you want them to focus on, especially with how the skills work, as they are class skills that are level 5, which can only be used in that class, so they need to reclass to another class, just the skills like in Awakening Fates. So yeah, for example, let's use the Warrior class since I mentioned earlier. It gets the skill Merciless, which allows you to do more damage, I believe 50% more damage when an enemy is broken. But you can't inherit this skill basically, unlike in like Awakening and Fates. So yeah, if you want that skill you need to be a warrior, and I don't mind that much. Well, on the topic of classes too, weapon ranks are actually fixed in this game, just like Genealogy of the Holy War, funny enough, which is the last round game I played. So, but characters do come with a blue proficiency. This allows them to basically get plus on rank in some classes. So for example, the early game unit Etier, she has a blue proficiency, so if you want to make her a warrior, she'll actually get B rank at those, rather than C, which is pretty cool. And yeah, like I said, the fifth weapon ranks, they work well with the infinite use weapons as well. And yeah, no need to worry about grinding up your weapon rank too, like in Fates, where it's kind of a chore. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, next up, when a unit maxes out the level, you can use a second seal. Second seal is normally used to reclass into a different class. You can basically do that whenever you want. As long as the class is in the same tier as yours. So for example, if you want to make a Lear a warrior, as long as you have the axe and bow proficiency, you can do it any time when you're promoted, and you become a level 1 warrior. If you want to continue leveling up as a warrior though, you want to get to level 20, and then you can use the second skill and go back through warrior again basically. So basically gain more levels. And yeah, second seals work quite similarly to how the Eternal Seal and Fates, which also just gives you more levels, so yeah. And yeah, to be honest, I also kind of prefer how second seals work in this game compared to Awakening. In Awakening, they can also be used to reset your level, but in Awakening it felt kind of broken, mainly because you weren't just getting extra stats. And also, I think it's also because of how EXP is also gone in Awakening. It doesn't really drop off a cliff when you loot as well, so yeah. At least that's what it feels like, so yeah. And yeah, of course in Fates 2, second skills are quite powerful because you can go to different classes, obviously get more skills. You can't really do that in Engage, which means that yeah, you can't become as overpowered, but that's okay. So overall, not only are the units really fun for me to use, but the customization strikes a good balance, and thanks to reclassing in the emblem system, with the emblems being really great here, as you don't need to stick with one emblem throughout if you want to experiment with a different build too. It'll be fun to see what fun reclassing options there is to try out, as well as my brother has already shown us some very cool ones so far. Yeah, we definitely both are messing around with some of the reclassing now in our later playthrough, so that was really cool. Anyway, on to the next section. Now time for the thing that I've heard the most praise for, and for good reason. The map design. So I feel like Engage has actually some of the best map design you can find in the Fire Emblem series, which is very nice to see considering that map design has been kind of a weakness as of recent titles, like 3000s for example. But anyway, I feel like there is a lot to like with these maps since they feel varied and they offer a fair challenge too, so most of my mistakes do come down to my own error as a player rather than the game being unfair. Which, yeah, that's great. Some of the map gimmicks used are also pretty interesting, particularly when enemies make use of warping themselves, kinda like some of the cargo games in that regard, like Frasier and Tyrion Sucker for example. Anyway, another thing I can also appreciate is that the maps, at worst, only really feel like a slog to play, which is in contrast to something like Conquest, where its worst maps can feel very suffocating to play, especially if you're not having a fun time like Hard Lunatic. And then yes, a lot of these maps are also played back to back as well. So, like the Ninja Cave, the Fox map, the Focus Wild Ride, they all basically happen around the same point in the game, which yeah. Engages maps, some of them can feel a bit sluggish to play, like the map where you get the dancer for example, but other than that, it doesn't really feel that bad to be honest, which is good. Like yeah, maps can feel a bit sluggish to play at points, but yeah, that's really the only time they feel bad to play. It's not, they never feel too unfair, or stuff like that. Unlike stuff like Conquest, like I mentioned. So yeah, that's what I really like to see because yeah, I do like it when, you know, maps, they offer the fair challenge of course, and yeah, this game definitely feels like it, and this can also be seen by the difficulties. But anyway, so the difficulties, you have normal mode, which is very beginner friendly. It's very easy, and even if you're new to Fire Emblem, you should be able to clear this no problem. So you're great for first timers. Due to enemies being weaker, some of the strategies being easy to play around, all that good stuff. You also get infinite uses of the time crystal, which is a bit overkill. Hard Magic only gives you 10 uses per map. This is the equivalent to the Miller's turn wheel, where you can basically rewind your turns if you made a mistake. And your normal mode, yeah, it's a bit overkill, you get infinite uses. So yeah, if you're playing on that, I wouldn't abuse that too much. But anyway, so I actually found hard the most engaging difficulty, which isn't always the case. My favorite game in the series, Radiant Dawn, I actually prefer playing it on its easiest difficulty because of the amount of XP you get. And also, its normal being kind of a challenge, for example. And yeah, that actually goes for a lot of games too, mainly the fact that you don't see ambush spawns on the lowest difficulties most of the time. Some games also either don't have a difficulty choice or only have like a few. Like, FE7 for example only has normal and hard for example, same with FE6, so yeah. But anyway, like I said, hard mode is actually my favorite of the difficulties because it actually strikes a good balance for me. It is a bit on the easy side when compared to like most middle difficulties, especially like Conquest for example, but that's alright with me, and yeah, it does mean that I enjoy it a lot more because it's on the easier side. But yeah, it's where the difficulty feels just right for me, because you can still mess around with funny ideas, but I still feel I can have a very fun time playing at the same time. Because yeah, even though yeah, it isn't super hard, but it's not super it never feels like brain dead or anything to play like that. So yeah, I do like this game's hard mode, and it's definitely the difficulty I recommend if you have already played a Fire Emblem game. If you haven't, you probably want to start normal mode. But anyway, let's talk about Maddening mode now. I haven't played Maddening mode myself, but I have watched my brother play through it twice. It's quite interesting in this game, since it does offer quite the challenge due to like lower the XP and stuff, but due to the better map design as well as the option to play on fixed growth rates, there are very few situations that feel really unfair or cheap even on this highest difficulty. But yeah, like I said, it's no walk in the park. You do get much less XP, and some enemies do have additional skills, and most bosses are immune to affected damage and break. So yeah, and they still have a lot of health. In fact, some of them might also have more health bars too. But yeah. Despite being the hardest difficulty though, it's definitely one of the more bearable ones. Especially when compared to Conquest Lunatic, which yeah, that one is brutal throughout. And then Three Houses Magic, which feels pretty stupid to play at points because of ambush spots and stuff. But yeah, yeah, like I said, overall, I feel like Engage really nails this difficulty. Sure, normal mode is quite easy, and to some people brain dead, but I don't really see the problem with that, especially if it's your first time playing a Fire Emblem game. But yeah, I think most people who've already experienced a Fire Emblem game will be just fine with hard mode. But yeah, that's how I feel at least. And yeah, I have experienced normal and hard at this point. And yeah, that's kind of the conclusion I came to. And yeah, like I said, Mad Thing, definitely not as horrible as it was in Three Houses, let's just say. Especially considering what my brother did to beat her. His strategies were actually really simple and easy to follow, which yeah, and compared to like what he did in like Conquest Lunatic and even Three Houses to extent, yeah, that's actually quite impressive. So yeah, I can respect Engage for having a much more bearable hardest difficulty. Let's move on to this game's base of operations now, called the Somnial. So the Somnial is of course the base in this game, and it's a place where you can prepare for the next battle and unwind. So most of the Somnial consists of activities that can be formed, like cooking meals, going to the arena, and playing the minigames. And these activities can be refreshed by being a skirmish or chapter, and in the case of normal and hard, doing some Tempest Trials. Go into more detail, the cooking is used to boost the stats of the units in the next set, as well as build a bit of support between the people you eat with. It's a fine activity, but I can't wish like a Fate you can make a unit more skilled at cooking appear more frequently, although you can shovel who cooks by going to your room resting. Because yeah, it is very frustrating when there's a dude who doesn't know how to cook and you get lowered stats as a result. I'm looking at you, Alfred, but anyway. Anyway, the arena rewards experience to a chosen unit depending on how they do in battle, and free experience never hurts. I do wish that SP though was easy to get with the arena, since you're forced to equip a regular bond ring if you want to get some SP, which is a bit annoying. And on Maddening mode, the amount of experience is actually fixed. It's 10 per arena battle and you can do 3, so yeah, 30 experience always. But on normal and hard you can get a little bit more, depending on how the unit performs, so yeah, that's pretty interesting. Anyway, the minigames are an interesting idea, but I feel like they're kind of unnecessary, especially near the end of the game. They can do some cool things, like the strength training can give you extra stats to live, with the push-ups giving +2 strength for example, which yeah, that could be pretty useful. Then there's Wyvern Ride, which can give you items, but they're mainly used for bond fragments, which you have talked about a little bit at this point. This is like the main currency used for most emblem related things, like leveling up that bond level. Doing that is important because you gain access to more skills for more skill inheritance as well as better stats on the emblem, all that jazz. So yeah, it's quite important to get the bond up as quickly as you can. And yeah, bond fragments can definitely help with that. And then yeah, another thing that bond fragments can be useful is making bond rings, although yeah. I feel like bond rings are not as important as I feel like they used to be. I feel like yeah, most emblem ring strategies are used now, even though yeah, all when though is still pretty powerful stuff, so yeah. That's a bond ring. But anyway, I feel like the thing about bond fragments for me is that you can avoid a lot of these minigames and you still have like a good amount. Sure, if you do go kind of crazy on the learning skills, you might run out. I think that happened to my brother on his manual playthrough because he can't do any skirmishes, but yeah, those are also an option too if you want to get more bond fragments too. Of course, they can take a little while, but I feel like they're a bit more enjoyable than the minigames, but anyway, that's just me. But yeah, outside of those things, bond fragments are pretty easy to get with another method in the Somnial, and that is good old Sommy, your little pet. You can pet him and feed him, and then that gives you some bond fragments, so yeah. And yeah, it doesn't take as long as playing on those minigames, which is a plus. And then also, you have these achievements on an achievement board. The reward for doing those is more bond fragments too. And they're pretty easy to just get a good amount. You get a lot of them from just progressing the game or doing some pretty basic stuff, so yeah. So yeah, it kind of makes the minigames feel like a one and done kind of deal, with fishing being the biggest offender to me, because it takes forever, especially later on in the game where you're allowed to fish more. And yeah, the reward you get just doesn't feel worth the time invested. And yeah, you could say something similar for Free Houses, but I feel like in Free Houses, even though the fishing in that game could take a while too, it just felt a lot more rewarding because of the large increase to your professor rank. But yeah, that's just me. So anyway, to wrap up, other things you can partake is a stable, where you can put out some animals and after battle they give you stuff. But the dogs are considered the best choice due to them providing ingots for forging. They can even give you the silver ingot, which yeah, those are normally really hard to come by. The updates also added some new stuff to the Somniel. The first major update gave you the recreational activity, which is a much easier way for you to raise support level between 2 units. Before that, it was quite slow, so actually seeing all the supports is difficult. But now it's a lot easier. Then there's also the well, which I talked about in the SP section quite a bit. You can basically drop in unwanted items, and after the next fight you can come back and get some new items. And yeah, it's a free-to-play way to get the SP books, which is a game changer for the SP economy in this game. But yeah, overall, I feel kind of weird about the Somniel because yeah, it kind of feels there for me, since I do like the fact that it's a bit more succinct when compared to Free Houses' Monostate, but there isn't much engaging to do here, since most of the activities don't feel like that much worth doing. Like, yeah, sure, there are some useful things to do here, and some of them are pretty cool to do, but I still feel kind of iffy about this space. So yeah, I don't hate it, but I don't like it that much either, and it's probably one of the weaker points of the gameplay for me. Overall though, despite being a bit mixed on the Somniel as a whole, I was very pleased with Engage's gameplay, as it proves very engaged to play these maps due to the good balance of difficulty they have, as well as the interesting scenarios to prevent as well. The equalization suits you quite well, as it's not too complicated, but still feels really engaging to partake in. And it does make it fun to plan future playthroughs as well. And the Emblem system also rewards creativity and trying different combinations without forcing the player to marry their build. While my playthroughs are the most memorable playthroughs I've done of a Fire Emblem game, they were still really fun, and it did help me figure out that Engage has some of the most fun gameplay in the series, which is great to see after being a bit on the fence about it before release. So yeah, I can definitely recommend Engage if you're looking for a very fun game to play. Now that we talked about the gameplay enough, let's talk about the other side of the coin, which is the story features and stuff. So yeah, let's start off with the presentation, the music, and the character designs. So I think this game actually looks really great, and might be one of my favorite Switch games in terms of visuals. The cutscenes look quite nice too, and the artwork is also really nice, especially some of the CGs and the environments themselves are also pretty nice to look at too. They're decently varied as well in my opinion as well. In battle it's also great because yes, the battle animations actually look quite nice, and the over the top nature at points does remind me of the good old GBA era. Anyway, so one thing that people are quite mixed on when it came to the visuals was the character designs. Of course, yeah, I was actually kind of like one of those people too, like I mentioned before. But they have really grown on me, especially after seeing them in action too. Let's take female Lyra as a very good example. At first, she looked kind of weird to me because, you know, the different colored hair and stuff. But she started to grow on me more and more, especially after seeing her official art. And my love for the design really truly begun when I got to see her in action, since the bold design helped her appear more expressive, which also helped me to appreciate her character too. So yeah, it was great to see Lyra had that big change in me for that. Then there are also some designs that I think can work in any Fire Emblem game too. Chloe was probably the first character that came to mind that looked really good. And then later on I grew to really love what Lapis looked like as well. But anyway, sure, some characters still look kind of strange, like Hortensia for example, but even she is growing on me too. So I say the character designs are actually really nice overall, and it really fits with the game's less serious overall tone. I think the music is also actually really good too. All the new tracks are nice to listen to, especially some of the intense tracks used for some of the boss themes and stuff. They really nailed the intensity for me. The remixes are also really nice, especially two remixes regarding Makai and Leaf, which sound godly to me now, so yeah. Sound design is also quite nice too, since sound effects sound pretty good to me overall, and the voice acting is once again very nice to listen to, and really adds to the plot related scenes and supports as well. Is it my favourite voice acting in this series? Hard to say, because I already liked Echoes and Free Houses, so yeah, I'm not so sure where Engage would be for compared to those, but yeah, I still really like it, is the main thing, so yeah. Overall, Engage's presentation is also a very strong point for this game, and it helped add to the already good gameplay too. Now let's talk about those characters themselves. So yeah, Engage does have quite the strange cast, because some of these units are very unhinged, but I actually kinda grew to like this cast. So, as a good starting point, let's talk about Alear again. So I was not expecting to like Alear that much to be honest, but Alear proved to be quite a likable character. They worked well as the lead, since they do interact and react to the plot in a meaningful way in my eyes, and it's probably helped by not only their expressiveness I talked about before, but also that voice acting for both genders is really good too, which really helps some of the plot scenes have more value. Also, Alear can be quite fun in some supports too, which add to the likability. Alear does have the weird moments at the start of the Ite support with the random laughing, but outside of that, seeing Alear trying to keep a level head over how strange some of these units are, or sometimes playing along with it, proved quite charming indeed. I'm not sure if I like Alear more than Shez, who proved another good lead due to likability, those being fleshed out in their own right, but I can see Alear as an example of very solid Fire Emblem lore. Sure, I probably prefer someone as someone like Ike, who, you know, is super no nonsense and stuff, but yeah, Alear is definitely very, very good. He kind of reminds me of Reen from Cold Steel as well. He's just a very good lead character that can also work as like a proxy for the player, I feel like, as well. Because yeah, that's kind of how I felt like with Reen as well in Cold Steel 1, and a bit of Cold Steel 2 as well, so yeah. Although yeah, both are definitely their own character and far from being an avatar in my mind, which is definitely kind of weird because yeah, Alear can be named, but yeah, like I said, I feel like they're a lot more detached from an avatar compared to, like, you know, good old Robin, Corrin, and even Violet to an extent. But anyway, as for the rest of the cast, most of them don't do too much in the main plot except for the four main royals of the allied countries. We have Alfred, who is of course from Firene, Diamant from Brodia, Ivy from Illusia, and Temera from Sol. I did really like how Diamant and Ivy were used. Diamant, of course, comes in the point of the plot that I really liked, and Ivy is just really cool throughout. To be honest, Alfred was pretty okay in my mind. He was pretty cool for the Firene arc, but other than that, he does have his moments, it's just that, yeah, they didn't stand out to me as much as Diamant and Ivy. And then Temera, I feel like she lacks memorable moments and screen time. Because, yeah, I can't really name what she does after she joins, unfortunately, unlike maybe Diamant and Ivy. The rest of the cast get most of their time to shine in supports. I say I like most of the supports, even if some only focus on the core basics of the characters. A good example is the Firene cast in the early game, since a lot of the supports focus on what they're known for, like Saline's tea addiction, Chloe's obsession with folk food and fairy tales, and then there's Louis and the people watching. But I do think there are definitely some hidden gems to be found for some of these units that does help to nuance them. And yeah, Saline is even a good example of this, even though I mentioned her just now. She has a great support with Ulcrest that actually really not only helps her out too, but I think it also helps Alfred in my mind too as well. Considering his support with his sister as well. So yeah, definitely, yeah, while some characters might not always have great supports, they definitely at least have some supports that actually I find pretty good, so yeah. So anyway, some characters mainly focus on the stupid and absurd supports. I feel like Goldberry is a very good example of this, since the character really makes her out to be like, in my brother's words, a psychopath, but it's kind of hilarious to see her act in her own unique way. Even if, yeah. Another funny thing about Goldberry 2 is that they actually changed her character a decent amount from the Japanese version, but I kind of find her more hilarious in the English version, to be honest. And that's kind of how I like to view her, to be honest, so yeah. Kind of weird, but anyway. She isn't the only character that I consider very unhinged. You have like Bunei and his interesting relationship with food, and then Fram and her cheerleading. But yeah. Like I said, this cast can be very weird at points. Which yeah, I can definitely see why people wouldn't like this cast, because yeah, like I said, yeah, the characters can be quite weird at points, like I just mentioned. But there are definitely some characters who I feel like never put a foot wrong in their supports. Mainly Lapis, Zelkov, and Ivy. And Kagetsu, I guess as well. Just yeah, Ivy's gang is just so good. Not only are all strong units, but their supports between each other are very charming indeed. And even some of the rest of the cast too. Like yeah, Zelkov really never puts a foot wrong in his supports. He's always just a really nice person. And yeah, I can definitely say the same with like Ivy and Kagetsu. Then there's also Lapis, who's my favorite character. Her exchanges being felt kind of thought-provoking for me. And yeah, that kind of ties on to my favorite support, which yeah, I'll talk about at a later point I think. But anyway, overall, it proved quite a wild ride learning about these characters, but I ended up quite like them in the end. And yeah, I feel like things are only getting better and better for me when it comes to these supports too, because yeah, the more I learn about the cast in this game and some of the supports, the better this cast just feels to me. A lot of the late game units you get are actually really good in terms of support too, so yeah, that's definitely something to look out for. And yeah, I think another good example of like characters growing me too is Hortensia. Hortensia is actually becoming one of my favorites thanks to her support, so yeah, that's great to see. Especially because yeah, I didn't really like her at first, maybe because you know, she is an enemy to begin with, but yeah, like I said, thanks to her supports and some of the serious subjects they tackle, she's actually grown me quite a bit, which yeah, I'm very happy to say. Let's talk about the main story a little bit now. So, a full plot synopsis won't be necessary with this game, but I will be spoiling a few things here and there, so I recommend skipping this section if you want to remain unspoiled about it. So now let's get started. So yeah, this story is kind of a strange one for me, considering I probably liked it more than most people do, but there are definitely some weak points in this plot. First off, let's go with the positives. So as stated before, I did like Alea as a lead character, and I say they worked quite well throughout, even the more serious moments too. Of course, again, the expressiveness and the voice acting really helps sell those points. Next up, no route spurdle in this story. This meant we got a more focused plot than something like Fates. Of course, this also probably helped the gameplay out too. Another game, of course, you can compare to is Three Houses. While I don't think Engage's plot is as good as Azure Moon, I feel like it's probably better than the rest of the routes. Crimson Flower has many problems with its writing, and then Verdant and Silver just feel too similar. Which is a shame because yeah, Verdant had Claude, and I kinda wish they did a lot more interesting things with it. Anyway, next, the tone of the story is less serious, which I thought was alright to see. With Fates, a lot of stupid things happen, and they were taken quite seriously, but it felt kinda hard to feel attached to some of those moments as a result. When engaged, sure, some stupid things happen, but I can excuse them a bit considering the game's less moody tone, I feel like. It's kinda weird. I guess also, maybe I'm just used to Fire Emblem doing stupid things at this point, I don't know. It's hard to say, but yeah. Some of the moments in this game, even though I didn't like them for being kinda stupid, I don't dislike them as much as some of the stupid points in like Fates, for example, so yeah. Like I said, kinda weird. But anyway. Next, as stated previously, I do like this cast, but that also goes for another character that I haven't talked about yet, and yeah, she's definitely one of the main characters in this game, Vale. So her role kind of reminds you of Ninian a little bit, but I feel like Vale ends up doing a lot more, I think a bit more satisfying to me as a result, since the story did flesh out quite well. And yeah, most of the stuff regarding her I feel like was done quite well, so yeah, I like Vale. She's definitely one of my favourite of the main cast in this game, to be honest. The final thing I want to bring up are some of my favourite parts of the story. Many of the events around the Brodia arc and in chapter 10 and 11 are actually really nice, and does set the threat of the main villain quite well. Chapter 11 does sell the hopelessness of his situation very well too, and when you get rescued, it did generally feel that way, thanks to getting some stuff back, like the time crystal, as well as the power of Ivy's crew. Let's go on some things I was more mixed on. So, the story's simplicity. So, I thought it was a good idea, and it does work with some aspects, like having a main villain throughout in Sombron, as well as having no routes for either, so this story proves very easy to follow and understand as a result. The issue is that some aspects of the story are probably a bit too simple, like the country's not being built up that much. They're mainly built up in like supports and stuff, but the main game doesn't really do too much with it, unlike Free Houses for example. So yeah, I don't really like the world building as much as Free Houses in my opinion. The plot twists are also quite simple and probably easy to predict too, but that didn't really bother me that much, to be honest. Anyway, the other thing I'm kind of mixed on too is actually Sombron himself. He does work as a villain, as well, just a villain you hate, because he does many horrible things throughout, especially to Alir and Vale, so it did feel somewhat satisfying to lay the beat down on him, that he deserved all those horrible things. The design is also pretty good too, especially that dragon form. The Cobra Snake dragon motif just really works, to be honest. The thing that made me feel a bit more mixed about Sombron though is his very basic motivation, where he wants to meet the emblem he lost. And I found it very strange that was his motivation to do everything he did, considering how basic of a motivation was. Regardless, I do think that Sombron at least works as a villain, and he's definitely better than someone like Garen and Fates for example. But anyway. As for the things I actually didn't like, I really didn't like what was happening around chapter 21 and 23. The stuff with Vale was pretty good, but other than that, it just kind of felt very contrived. I felt like that had to be a less contrived way for Sombron to raise Gradon and for Alir to become the 13th emblem, because Alir needs to die twice or thrice if you count the flashbacks shown for all those things to happen, and that was like ridiculous. That's definitely where I felt like the plot was falling off a little bit. And yeah, it's also where I think, yeah, the plot is probably the stupidest too. Anyway, then you have the next map where you have Zephyr. She also does something kind of stupid too, where she gives Alir this crystal she made to help them, and she doesn't even know the reason why she wants to help them either. Although, it's probably the fact that she wants to hide the real reason from them, but still, this is like, it's so weird and stupid and all that, so yeah. But yeah, definitely not as bad as the last chapter, because yeah, like I said, it's a lot less contrived, but it is a nice segue into talking about the Hounds. So, I don't hate everything about the Hounds, mainly because Gris works so well as a chaotic madman, and it was cool to see Morvia make the tough choice to desert the Hounds to avenge Marnie. The thing I don't really like was them trying to add the sympathetic angle to the Hounds, which I thought kind of fit oddly with the very black and white cast this game generally has. But also the sympathetic angle was handled very poorly in my opinion. Let's go with Marnie first. Her backstory felt like it was thrown in last second to make us feel bad for her death. Basically, yeah, you're going to the place where chapter 21 takes place, I do believe. She reveals her backstory along the way, and then next cutscene, she dies. Yup. Like I said, it didn't really pay off for me that they did that. They really should have either told us earlier or built it up, in my opinion. And then there's also Zephyr and Gris's last chat at the end of 23, I do believe. Well, 24, sorry. Actually, 23, sorry. So, yeah. They basically have a chat as they're dying. And again, it didn't really do much for me either. Because the motivations are okay. But I felt like with them leaving the plot now, it just feels a little too late to add this sympathetic angle. Because, yeah, I kind of hated Zephyr's guts throughout the whole game. So, again, it just feels very strange to me. I don't know. That they tried to make them more sympathetic, especially considering the DLC as well. But yeah, we'll get into that later in another video. But yeah, that's the spoiler section over now. So overall, about the story stuff, like I said, even though I'm a bit mixed on Engage's story as a whole, I was pretty happy with the cast, as it does feel like this game does embrace the weirdness of some of these characters, which is probably why I don't mind them that much in this game. It also helps that there is a good number of characters that may even rank as some of my favourites of all time, mainly Lapis, but anyway. It is also helped by the presentation being extremely good due to the game looking very nice, with the characters standing out in a good way, a good soundtrack to go along with it, as well as some very nice voice acting all around. So, let's now move on to the conclusion. So, to wrap things up, Engage proved much better than I was expecting. I would rank it pretty highly in my Fire Emblem totem pole, due to how they nailed the gameplay, due to how fun it felt to play thanks to the good map design and the new mechanics working so well, alongside the maps as well. Sure, I do feel a bit mixed on the thumbnail and the main story, but the gameplay and the chaotic cars do make up for it in my mind. And as I continue to see more and more Engage, I come to appreciate more and more things about it too. I also feel like Engage also has pretty great replayability as well, which is probably why I still enjoy watching and playing it even now. So overall, I can definitely recommend Fire Emblem Engage, especially if you're looking for a game with some very fun gameplay and a pretty good cast as well. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where I would tier this game compared to the other Fire Emblem games as well. Speaking of which, I do want to continue talking about Engage as well in some other videos. There's the DLC obviously, I want to make a separate video on that, maybe after I've done my DLC playthrough that I'm currently doing. That's probably a good time to do it, because yeah, the DLC introduces quite a lot of things. Some new emblems, a new side story, some new units, and some new classes are the main ones we're going to be talking about in that video, so yeah. But like I said, I do want to make that tier list video. It might be the next video, potentially, we'll see. Because yeah, again, I'm very curious to see how Engage ranks when compared to my favorites as well. And the final thing, I want to talk about the units in more detail as well, so I want to make some videos about them as well. I have an idea of how I want to tackle it as well, so yeah. Not sure when I want to do that, because yeah, it's probably going to take some time and effort to make those videos, but yeah, I'll see what I can do about that. But yeah, it might be something I think about during Shadow Dragon, my next LP. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Engage. Like I said, a really great game, probably one of my favourite games I've played this year, even if it's not my actual favourite. But yeah, it's definitely a Fire Emblem game I recommend. I'd probably recommend it a bit more compared to Three Houses, if you want a Fire Emblem game for your Switch. Three Houses is still good though, as I'll talk about in the tier list video, so yeah. But yeah, like I said, Engage, good game, and I can't wait to talk about it more down the line. But yeah, hopefully yeah, we'll see. Like I said, tier list video should be the next Engage related thing. Hopefully that won't be too difficult to make. And yeah, I'll see you guys again for whatever I have in store next as well.